Bad call by Mark Geiger. No, it's probably not the ref tonight. I actually,
not.
so we aren't recording yet, are we?
Oh, yeah, we're recording.
Okay,
Go ahead.
So
good.
Mark Geiger actually worked the VAR room for the 3 home playoff fixtures. He was like the pro VAR supervisor, which means, yeah, I know, right? But I don't think he was allowed to actually say anything. I think he was just the observer. So, because he's retired. So our booth, it kind of butts up to a restroom. And at halftime of the Philadelphia playoff match, I went to use the restroom, and I look at the stall next to me, oh, that's Mark Geiger. What are you doing here? And we didn't say anything, but I'm thinking, man, if this guy knew half the things I said about him on the radio.
It's true.
This would be a very uncomfortable restroom experience, even more uncomfortable than it was. Anyhow, sorry.
It's always scary when...
We're going to edit that out, right?
Yeah, totally. It's always scary when referees follow me on Twitter.
Uh-oh.
Because I'm trying to remember what did I say about them in the last match.
Yeah.
I think I've been okay so far.
Well, I would imagine all the Oglethorpe and collegiate matches you do, you could actually run the risk of running into a lot of local refs when you do that, right?
Luckily, the local refs I've run into have backed me on my referee slander and broadcast.
Okay.
So they've supported it, especially the San Jose one.
Oh. Well, yeah, quick trigger Penso. Yeah, but hey. Anyhow, these are the things that, fortunately, Jason and I think we can get away with on radio, whereas Kevin, with far more viewers on TV and also the national and international, not syndication, but the way that it's distributed, Kevin's got to choose his words a lot more carefully. I feel like you and I can be a little more bombastic and not necessarily more honest, but a little more open in how we feel about things like that.
So who's your favorite referee in the league, Kevin?
Oh, let's not go there, shall we? Let's not go there.
There's some good ones.
Because I'm going to side with the Irish guy. Kelly, for me, is probably the best.
Alan Kelly?
Yeah.
Oh.
He had a rough year.
Oh.
He had a rough year in the middle there.
I mean, did you see that second yellow on Michael Bradley that he didn't call a couple weeks ago?
I remember that.
Honestly, I think one of the problems that we run into, and I see this in the NBA, is the really good, experienced referees are starting to retire.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you all have heard about the shortage of referees at the youth level, the high school level. There aren't really a lot of good referees that are coming up into this now, which makes it good to see guys like Nima Sagafi, who are pretty young, having a really good year like they had. But, we joke about Mark Geiger. It's not a good thing when Mark Geiger retires. Mark Geiger's a good ref. I mean, chaos seems to find him, but he's a good ref. But I like Kevin Stott. I like Drew Fisher. I like Sagafi, like I said. Marufo's a really good ref. I mean, there are good refs in pro.
Rubio Vasquez.
Kevin Stott, for me, is the one that I feel that he's consistent. Yeah. If he's going to let the game breathe a little bit and let some tackles go, he tends to be consistent throughout the game. And I think from the player's standpoint and a coach's standpoint, that's all they want throughout the game is consistency.
So... this is how it's going to go tonight.
Starting?
Yeah, exactly.
Really?
This is how it's going to go tonight. It's kind of just we're sitting around having a conversation up in the attic here at Wild Heaven. First off, thanks to everybody at Wild Heaven for having us. This place is awesome. I hope for some of you it's your first time and you're checking it out and you will come back because they've been really gracious to have us, and we're planning on some other events as well.
Vamos Cafeteros.
Ah, very nice. So we will be taking questions from you guys as well, so start thinking about them. But pretty much everything's fair game. I mean, we've had an expansion draft today. Atlanta United has lost Brandon Vasquez, and he went to Nashville and then to Cincinnati. There's been a bunch of moves and trades around the league, so we can get into that. We can get into the reentry draft, free agency, all that stuff, the 2020 season upcoming, but also just kind of like what we do, and this is how it started. It was Kevin's idea in Montreal in the airport because it kind of happened impromptu with some fans who were flying back on the same flight as us.
And I think we often talk about, when we're coming back from trips, maybe I'll end up on a flight for, how many hours did we sit together for?
3, whatever the Montreal flight is, like 3 and a half.
Was that what it was, Montreal?
That's a brutal flight. That's not a short flight.
It was a great flight sitting next to Jason.
It
felt like it was 10 minutes because we talked about the game, we talked about broadcasting, we talked about the officiating. Although we didn't start with the officiating that day. And, it was wonderful. It was great. And we just got thinking that maybe there's lots of things that happen behind the scenes that might be of some interest. Maybe not, but we can chat about them anyway and have a laugh along the way.
So let me ask you guys, since you guys do the same thing but very differently. What is preparation like for you? Because that's a question I always get. Like, what is it like to prepare for a game? So for radio and for TV and the difference between the two, what's preparation for a normal game like?
I mean, I don't know about you, Kevin. I think time management becomes really, really vital when you're preparing for a match. And I think you and I are a little bit similar in that we do Atlanta United, but we do other things too. So time management becomes critical. If we are fortunate enough to have one fixture a week where we have 6 days to prepare, and let's say there's no travel, I try to go Monday through Friday. Monday is my big preparation day where I'll spend a couple hours. I'll try to watch some film if I can. But, I and Jason could probably describe it better than I use cards, okay? I have a card for Atlanta United, a card for the opponent. And on the card I have, I think, 26 squares. And I got this idea from Arlo White, except I wasn't really savvy like Arlo, where he learned how to print out labels and just, be able to stick a label onto his lineup card, and then if someone was subbed out, he put a new label on. I'm not that smart. I don't really know how to use label makers. So I just have everyone on the roster on the card. And what I'll do on Monday is really, really work on the opponent. We're fortunate that we see Atlanta United every week. I feel like after a couple weeks of preseason, maybe one or two regular season fixtures, we kind of know with what we're dealing with Atlanta United. We have the notes memorized. We update their statistics on the cards, but we kind of know what they're all about. So I'll really work that opponent really hard on Monday, and that is a multi-hour deal. Like I said, I'll try to watch some film. I can't read my own handwriting, so I'm probably going to sound like a hot mess to all you guys tonight, but it's the truth. I'll type in, name, phonetic spelling of the name, height, weight, where they're from, some notes on their career, some notes on the season they're having, statistics, and every player on the opposing team gets a square. And I line it up numerically for quick reference. And that's basically what I spend Monday on, is researching the opposing team. Tuesday through Friday, I spend another hour per day just trying to not necessarily memorize but familiarize. To me, Kevin, the biggest point of preparation on match day comes when the teams come out to warm up. Because we, in MLS, unfortunately, especially at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, we don't really have the luxury of being that close to the pitch. It can be very difficult to identify players as high up as we're sitting. We certainly can't read numbers. So what I'm doing during the opposing team's warm-up, I'm looking, okay, well, I can see that give me a team, just a random team. Montreal. Okay, Nacho Piatti's wearing orange boots. I'm going to make a little note there. Piet, he has a mohawk today. I'm going to write that down.
Try to imagine Piet with a mohawk.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of this.
Yeah, it might be. Lapalainen is wearing long sleeves, so I'm going to write that down. And then I feel like I'm ready to go. But honestly, I feel like I probably do not use about 95% of the material that I have on that card. Mm-hmm. But I always want to be prepared to use it if I have to. And I feel like going into a broadcast, if I feel like I've prepared, if I put in that maybe 8 to 10 hours a week worth of work, I'm going to feel confident that I'm going to do at least a serviceable job. There is no worse feeling than going into a broadcast, or anything in life really, but especially broadcast, unprepared. So I take that aspect of it very, very seriously.
I think, by the way, I think that deserves nearly a round of applause, because the preparation, the work Mike does on Atlanta United throughout the season.
But it's our job, though.
No, of course.
Please don't applaud. It's our job.
No, but I think you do a wonderful job. Please don't applaud. I think I agree with all of that. For me, watching games is over and over again. I wreck Dan Gargan's head the week of a game. Like, I'm calling him nearly every day, and one of the big things is just making sure that we're on the same wavelength going into a broadcast, but also I want to know his thoughts on every single player. I want to know his matchup thoughts. I want to know how he feels about the coaches, how he feels about certain guys that he played with in the past. And once I know where his head is at in games, I don't even need to look at him. It's like, I think one of the most important things in broadcasting is chemistry. It's something you guys have. it's tremendous and it's clear for everyone to see, and I think it's something that hopefully you'll see with Dan and I and Gillian on the sideline too. It's crucial to be in touch and for everybody to be swimming in the same direction. From a TV standpoint, we've got a director that wants to make sure that he controls the game, dominates in terms of picking the right shots, and make sure it's a beautiful broadcast for you guys at home to see. Our producer is constantly in touch too. Eric Kendall is his name. He's a young guy. He's a local guy here in Atlanta. Absolutely tremendous with Fox Sports South. He's in touch with us about the narrative, the discussion, and what our big talking points should be. And one of the issues that we sometimes have in preparing for a game, which I'll bring this up, why not? You and I, we talked about it before the broadcast in Toronto, was Andrew Carleton. When Andrew Carleton forgot his passport, that's when we're kind of in a position that's a little bit difficult, because we've got to talk about it, but we don't want to hammer Andrew Carleton. It can happen to anybody. I spoke with Michael Parkhurst recently, who had the same problem. He left his passport out in San Jose, and he was back in New England when he was a rookie, and he had to try and get his passport posted, and it landed back at his house like an hour before he had to leave to go get a flight to South America on like a preseason trip. Like, these sorts of things can happen to anybody, and it happened to Andrew Carleton. The club were fine with us saying it on the air.
In fact, they urged us to say it.
Yeah, they did.
Which was unusual.
It was, and it wasn't his first mistake, but at the same time, Andrew Carleton is a kid. Right. Andrew Carleton has a mother and father that are going to be watching the games as well. And I'm thinking down the line, if my son was playing one day and if he was to make a mistake, I don't want the broadcaster to go out and hammer him. I just don't want that. So what did we do? We got Doug Roberson to tweet it.
Right. Yeah,
that's very true.
That's exactly what we did. So no, yeah, I mean, look,
this was epic.
Doug knows. So I mean, in Toronto, we're in a pretty tiny radio booth. It's about as wide as this table, and we're having a little bit of a discussion because when something happens in the team, we have to respect the fact, A, that we're employed by the team, so we have to serve their wishes, but B, we have access to information that is not meant for publication or broadcast, and we have to respect the fact that that's information that we cannot transmit because we have a level of access that other people do not have. We have to respect the integrity of the locker room. You're never, ever going to see me fire off a tweet when we're on the team charter. You're never, ever going to see me fire off a tweet if we're on the team, but because that is sacred space. That's their space. We're getting a ride. So we were having a pretty robust discussion about, okay, this is what the club is telling us about Andrew. Kevin brings up a very valid concern that his parents are probably going to be watching on television. We don't want to kill the kid. How do we mention this? We know that Doug is in the room with us.
Well, Doug knew about it. We didn't tell Doug.
Doug knew about it.
Right.
Doug knew mostly about it. So it's like, Doug, maybe you should talk to Chris Winkler about this a little. Chris Winkler does comms for Atlanta. Maybe you should talk to Chris Winkler a little bit. And
this would be a great tweet for you.
Yeah,
Doug.
I mean, wow. I mean, when the team sheet comes out, you might want to ask some questions about. Now, there was another. I'll tell another story where we didn't necessarily play Doug in Monterey. Mm-hmm. So Jason, we were in D.C. that Sunday night. Jason flew home on Monday. Mm-hmm. I went with the team to Monterey on their charter. Monday, before we flew to Monterey, Atlanta United had a training in Virginia at an indoor facility, and Julian Gressel tweaked his ankle.
Right.
Okay, and remember, he didn't play the first leg against Monterey, right? So he hurt himself in training that Monday, and it looked like a pretty gnarly injury when it happened. Well, like I said, I'm in that sacred team space. I can't report it. I can't talk about it. I had access to something that no one else did. I have to respect that. So we get to Monterey. Doug, and I think you and Doug both came down the day before the match, right? And Doug and I were touring Monterey's stadium because they were going to have an open training for the Mexican media to get a chance to speak to Frank. And I was at the stadium to check our booth and make sure the lines were working. And Doug's watching the portion of training that was open to the media, and he's counting all the players. He goes, we're missing one. Who are we missing? I don't know. They go, no. I'm pretty sure there's only 17 here. What's going on? I don't know. And then we go into the media room, and Frank starts by saying that Julian is out. So that's one of those occasions where I knew before. It's a rare occasion when I know something before Doug, but it was one of those occasions where I could not tell him because I witnessed something that was not open to the media. It was only open to team personnel. Those are dilemmas that we deal with.
Of course,
sometimes.
And those are sometimes you have to say to a club member who might not be that media savvy, listen, it's our duty to broadcast this game. We can't avoid this for the entire broadcast.
Right.
We need to mention that Andrew Carlton isn't here or there's a player missing. Going back to the original, I went off on a bit of a tangent there for a second. The other big preparation, anyway, for me is relationships within MLS. It's the best league by far for getting to know, Olivier Brett, for example, is a really good friend of mine up in Montreal now. So in the build-up, we're always talking. We're always in touch. We're chatting about their team, Atlanta, and just helping each other out an awful lot. Players from opposing teams, anyone you can get in touch with that you can talk with, I think is just hugely beneficial in the league. And there are great guys I'm sure you've met around the league too that make it worthwhile. When you get to those cities and you can maybe have a beer with them or a chat with them, it's wonderful.
It's interesting, and we were talking about it before we started. On the radio side, there's not as many teams that do radio or travel radio, so it's a whole different world with the radio broadcasters than the TV, because there's obvious people for you to reach out to. On radio, sometimes there isn't anybody.
No, I counted. There are only 9 clubs that have an English language radio broadcast and their announcers travel to road games. We're one of them. We're one of 9. There are 4 clubs that don't even have English language radio. Houston, D.C., Philadelphia, and Chicago, which, by the way, I think is very unfortunate. Those are 4 of the biggest markets in the league, and they don't have radio. I think they're missing an opportunity. So that's where I call in my secret weapon, which is Mr. Longshore here, because I think Google Doc has been our best friend over the last 2 years, isn't it? Where Jason does do a lot of the film work, a lot of the grunt work. He'll say, "Hey, watch in his notes. Watch out for Felipe. He's a master of the dark arts."
I think I actually wrote that. Yeah,
I think you did. Yeah. Well, that's why it stuck with me. Piatti does this when he goes to his left, goes to his right, things like that. Things that are way over my head, but at least I appreciate the intel. So that's where Jason and I have to work really, really closely, because Jason has a level of expertise and understands some nuance about the sport that I don't. And we don't have the luxury of being able to consult with a lot of other radio announcers across. Jake Zivit in Portland would be one.
Yep.
Joe Tatino with LA Galaxy would be one.
Glenn Crooks in New York.
Glenn Crooks, absolutely. Yeah, I was so thrilled for Matt Johnson in Seattle.
Yeah.
He's one of the best. And Tommy Galerter in Cincinnati is someone who, was really one of the first to kind of proactively reach out before a game and say, tell me about Atlanta. We don't really get that a lot on radio. So there are a few announcers that are really great resources for us, but the disadvantage for us on the radio side is, Houston's a weird example because I think you can reach out to...
Houston, for me, is a weird one because Glenn Davis has been a good friend, and he always reaches out when he's doing a national game or a Houston game for info on Atlanta and just to get a sense of the feel of it. Brian Dunseth and Real Salt Lake as well does that. So you build up relationships, and it's a key.
No, and one of the things that you touched on, Mike, and the Google Doc, which is really cool, is that you have to describe, and that's one of the huge big differences between what Mike does and what I do, is that you have to paint that picture for everyone in their car. Anyone listening to you guys at home that's not watching the game live or listening to the sound on TV, you've got to know exactly where Piatti is in the field, and maybe he's going to cut in, and you've got to figure out how to paint that picture. Whereas more often than not, the job of TV, especially with the game of soccer, is learning when to interject, when to speak, when to completely lay out. And for me, I was screaming at myself, shut up, Kevin, don't say anything, shut up. and it happens sometimes. Michael Parkhurst is coming onto the field for his last ever time in the regular season, and I'm not going to say anything. Why would I say anything? You can mention that it's his final game in the regular season and then zip it, because no one needs to hear me, and it's not about the commentator. Let the 17s take over at that point. Let you guys do your thing. And that's the best commentary that I've ever been part of, to be honest. And I said nothing because it looked electric on TV.
But this is where I think with Atlanta United we have a luxury having you, Kevin, because Kevin the year before is pitside at El Clasico as Ian Esta's coming off for the final time. So talk about class here. I mean, you have someone who's been a pitside reporter for the biggest club match in the world. So you have that experience that you can draw back on in a moment like what we had with Michael Parkhurst.
Well, it's a producer too, and Eric. Eric will sometimes say to me, after a game, we have a producer that will send us the he sends it on Vimeo, the full broadcast, full of game notes as to where he thinks we can get better, what went well. And the big critique for me has been, hey, maybe lay out there. You know, like, that's a cool moment. No, it's true, but it's I'll often watch it back and I'm like, he's spot on. He's absolutely right. Like, there's no need to talk over that. There's no need to impersonate Ric Flair. You know, I'm never going to be Ric Flair.
No,
Maybe
there's always
TV.
a need to impersonate Ric
Maybe
Flair.
on TV,
always.
on radio, we'll go there.
Yeah, we've gone there a few times.
I mean, we incorporated Tony Schiavone into our broadcast this year, which I thought was really a lot of fun.
Yes.
Kind of in a fun, good-natured, hype-producing way. I think we have a little more liberty to have some fun and be a little more bombastic on the radio side than you on television. And, I mean, you are the visual representation of the club.
Which is a problem at times. Like, I'm a sweaty Betty. Like, if I have to run... No, seriously, these are the moments that sometimes the more interesting side of behind the scenes and the things that can go wrong very quickly. For TV, like, you may notice that at one point I could be interviewing Frank on the benches. Next thing we're on the set, then the pregame show. But between those, I have to go back upstairs to record something, and then you've got to go upstairs for the meeting at the start. So you end up playing a bit of yo-yo at the stadium. Mercedes-Benz Stadium's the toughest stadium, in Major League Soccer.
Is it the most
around.
difficult?
Yes.
Okay.
It's easily the most difficult.
Okay.
And no matter how many times I say hello to Betty, and Betty knows me so well at this point, and I love Betty, but she's still got to stop at every floor. The kitchen guy still has to come in with all those pasta dishes, and I'm like, shit. Sorry, we're like,
it's all good.
So the final regular season game, Eric, our producer, said, I want you to stay for the full pregame show. We've got a little bit of an extended time between the end of the pregame show and the start of the game. You'll make it back up in time. I didn't have enough time, not at all. and this is where the sweaty Betty part comes in. And I looked at myself on camera afterwards, and I looked like I had just done a 5K. We had about, to get from the pregame set to being on camera, we had about 4 minutes. Like, I'm in that moment, I'm thinking, this is a disaster. So we had this lady called Sherry that works with Fox Sports South. Absolute legend. Sherry made us look like complete divas, which I hated, but we needed her to get to where we needed to go. Gargan doesn't sweat because Gargan could run a marathon in his sleep. He's so fit right now. And then there's me. And we're racing through. Again, there's the guy with the pasta dishes. And Sherry's like, get off! We're on live TV! Get out of here! I'm like, Sherry, calm down. She's like, no, we got to go. And we run upstairs. And Eric is like, on air in 30 seconds.
Wow.
And it was a case of plugging it and making sure we're up. And that's my biggest fear is honestly like a stupid thing, like making sure that my earpiece is plugged into the right outlet. Those sorts of things. And then all of a sudden you plug it in, you're getting a count saying 3, 2, and you're just like, all right, I look like a disaster, but on camera we go. And that's one of the trickiest things about Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I used to do all the broadcasts for the Chicago Fire, and it was simple. Easy stadium to navigate, up and down. Mercedes-Benz Stadium, for us, that's one of the great challenges. And I think just a part of it is remaining in sync, keeping a positive energy. We love to play music before we go. I know it's a bit of a stupid thing, and it's a Dan Gargan thing. He'll often have some rapper on that I have no idea what his name is, and he knows all the lyrics. I haven't got a Scooby-Doo, but that's okay. It sounds good. It sounds good, and we're having a laugh. And we're like bouncing away to Big Boy before we go. Like, that's. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it could be an hour before the show, or Dan will start doing push-ups just to wake up.
He did that in our booth during that rain delay in Montreal.
Yes,
last year.
he did.
I was wondering what he was doing.
Yes.
What was he doing?
He came into our booth and did push-ups. Remember that lightning delay in Montreal last year? Yeah. When we had the non-playing Montreal reserve sitting right in front of our booth, listening to me, brutalize their team for 90 minutes.
I'm telling you, at least a couple of them gave us a thumbs up at the end of the game.
I hope they were not sarcastic thumbs.
No, I think they were legit. It was thumbs. It wasn't the other finger.
No. Well, they're Canadian. Everyone's polite.
Yeah,
no one's
course,
nasty.
Of course. So, okay, we've talked about stadiums, and we're going to get some questions here in just a second. Favorite stadium to call a game from, Mike?
In terms of atmosphere or broadcast booth?
Take it wherever you want. And, of course, other than Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
It's by far and away the Benz, just so you know.
Okay.
We'll pick a second. But it is. For me, anyway, from the vantage point we have,
this is where it's very different, though.
It's incredibly different.
Yeah, because you had our vantage point for the playoff game,
For the playoff game, yeah. Yeah, it's tough.
It's different.
It's tough. It's different. You're at an angle. You're higher up. The TV booth, you could play a five-a-side game in there. It's beautiful. There's the most gorgeous toilet if you needed to go right before the game. It's
Mark Geiger
it's
isn't using it, I'm assuming, right?
No,
we have to use the Mark Geiger toilet.
Do you? Sorry, guys.
No,
but it's perfect. The worst stadium. Can I start there?
Yeah, go for it.
Do you mind?
Yeah.
The worst this year for us was Cincinnati.
Really?
We got absolutely screwed in Cincinnati.
Well, remember that booth? Like, it was very narrow, and you were on the upper row of the booth. You couldn't even be on the window.
Had whatever.
There's so many worse than Cincinnati to me.
But they messed up our booth. We weren't.
Oh,
supposed to be
you
in that
guys
booth.
had issues. That's
so
right.
We had a ledge coming down. So I'll show you guys after if you want. I'll show you here. Our producer. I rang Eric Kendall before I came out here today, and I said, any stories that stand out? And he said, watching you guys trying to call that game in Cincinnati, both of you were like, we couldn't sit because of the angle for whatever reason. So we were like this, trying to look underneath the ledge for the entire game.
I felt like we needed a harness, or we were going to fall down in that thing.
And again, Gargan's got a strong back. Me, not so much. So by the end of the game, struggling.
Well,
luckily Joseph lit it up for us that day.
We've been lucky. We've been to every stadium but the new Minnesota stadium. So we've been to everyone but that. As far as stadium atmosphere is concerned,
Okay, let's start there.
Portland,
Yeah.
Montreal.
Yep.
I'm sorry, Orlando. I have to
Really?
say.
Yeah.
I have to say. No.
No, it's fun to call a game from there.
Really
because
fun to
it's
call
that.
a game there. Yeah, because we're right practically in the stands.
People have had some very colorful things to say to us.
We've been. Well, no, I mean we've been ejected from that stadium.
Yes, we've been kicked out of that stadium.
You've been kicked out.
We've been ejected from that stadium.
Hang on, we need to hear that story.
Well, I'll remind me to circle back to it. We've been ejected from that stadium. We've had people scream things at us.
I've had people text
give us
me
obscene
to
gestures.
see if I'm okay.
Yeah.
Because they can hear people screaming at us on the broadcast.
Remember the one where I think it was the May one last year where they had the bottle throwing where I think Hugh Douglas reached out to us and said, if you need a bodyguard the next time you go down there, let me know. But I like that. I enjoy that. I like feeling like I'm part of the atmosphere. So I have to say Orlando.
What's the worst for you?
Atmosphere
can we go,
or
just broadcast position?
DC, it's not even close.
DC and Columbus would be the two.
Columbus, we had Columbus, we've had weird stuff every time.
Yeah, Columbus. So 2 years ago when we were in Columbus, Jason was with you.
Yeah.
Your TV booth in Columbus isn't bad. The radio booth is basically the size of a telephone booth, and it's on the byline.
Who's Big Spoon? Who's Big Spoon between you two?
Well, no, but he wasn't doing the game.
I wasn't there.
No. He
I was
wasn't
with
there.
you that game.
He was your Big Spoon that night.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm
just picturing you two in a phone booth.
I mean, honestly, when we went to Columbus this year, and that's a whole other story, what happened to Jason in his flight, but we were really worried, okay, if we are in this phone booth, I think I'm going to run a mic outside the booth, and Jason's going to be in the stands. Because if you listen to that broadcast last year, the booth is fully enclosed. You cannot open a window. So I had to run a microphone to get crowd noise out of the booth and into the portal, basically, which led you into the stands. And there was an usher standing right there. And in order to get crowd noise, I had to put the microphone right next to the usher. And the usher would not stop talking because there was a security guard who was flirting with her the whole game. So you're listening to the security guard mac on the usher, and then some season ticket holder goes to his seat and asks the usher, "Oh, what did I miss?" And the usher goes, "Oh, well, we just had a corner kick and it almost went in the net. It's so close." And I'm going on the radio. No, it wasn't close. Don't listen to this lady. Finally, I had to just turn the microphone off. So Columbus is challenged. DC is the absolute worst. Their new stadium, they did not plan on having broadcast booths.
That's disappointing.
So they had to build out a broadcast booth in the last row of their press box. Unfortunately, there's a very large overhang over the press box. I'll show you photos afterwards. Yeah. The booth is also behind one of the goals.
It's plexiglass.
You have to look through 2 layers of plexiglass. One is fine.
Yes.
2 is a problem. Have you ever been to a fun house and you've looked at yourself in the mirror and I look like I'm 110 pounds? That's literally what we were looking at. Now, good news, there's a monitor in the booth. So if we're missing anything, we can just look in the monitor, right?
You
Except the
think.
monitor's behind us.
Yeah.
And the other problem with the monitor is you cannot control the volume.
No.
Either you must turn the monitor off or it's turned on and it's full-fledged volume. So if you listen to our broadcast this year, you probably heard John Champion and Taylor Twellman just as much as you heard us because we couldn't control the volume.
Wow.
Horrible broadcast booth. Best broadcast booths, Bridgeview, Foxborough, Seattle, Portland. Those would be my 4.
I love Portland, yeah. Red Bull Arena is a good one, too.
Red Bull's a good
Red
one,
Bull's
too.
excellent.
I think,
NYCFC, no?
Oh.
I'm joking.
You know what, though? It should tell you something if the Yankees radio booth behind home plate at Yankee Stadium is still better than what we have in D.C.
Easy.
That should tell you something right there.
I didn't
and we've done games in stands. Like at LAFC, we were in the stands because
fun.
they didn't have a radio, but that was fun.
Did you guys ever call a game at RFK, DC's old stadium?
No, we did not have that
There
pleasure.
you would have been spooning a raccoon.
Yeah.
like honestly, there you're climbing under. It's crazy. It was absolutely nuts. So it's
Stuff
probably.
falling
I'm
down.
guessing the new stadium is better. Yeah.
I had motion sickness after calling that game.
Wow.
Because of looking through 2 different types of glass. Breck Shea is like disappearing into thin air as I'm trying to call the game. And then spinning around to look at the monitor and hearing, I think it was actually Fox because it was Stu Holden who was in my ear the whole game.
No, that was the Labor Day game last year.
Okay.
Because remember, it was the ESPN opener this year.
That's right.
And that was a rough time for us, just kind of getting used to the new look of the team a little
we
bit
had
too.
2 CONCACAF games.
Yeah, 2 CONCACAF. We were just in Costa Rica, which was, I think, we spent 27 hours in Costa Rica. We probably spent just as much time on airplanes. We fly right back to Atlanta. We do the game at Kennesaw, which is actually one of my favorite games of the year this past year.
Yeah.
But then we go right to D.C., miserable weather, team gets killed. We know we're going to Monterey, where the weather is awful by Monterey standard. That was a really tough week. That was a really, and then we're sharing that tiny hotel room in Monterey. They canceled the charter flight back home because they couldn't get us a gate to park at, so we had to stay an extra day in Monterey. Like, that was kind of a tough time.
Yeah.
And that D.C. match and the experience we had in that broadcast booth probably made it 10 times worse.
How many flights were you guys on? Again, one of the huge differences between what we do is we had 17 regular season games this year.
Right.
You guys
and we had
do it all. So you're with.
We did everything other than Open Cup. We weren't allowed to do that. Thank you, U.S. Soccer, which is don't get me started. So we had 2 road legs in CONCACAF. Those were both charters, though.
Yep.
When we charter with Delta, it's awesome. We take the Braves Hawks plane, beautiful plane. When the league provides the charter, wow. I mean, didn't Orlando refuse the league provided charter from Philadelphia?
Allegedly, yes.
Like, it was like that plane from Major League where they're taping up the propeller. So we had those every regular season fixture, so that's 17 times 2, 34. We had some layovers.
Yeah.
So probably, 40, 45 flights this year when it was all said and done?
Yeah.
You know, Mike's become the master. With radio, you're saying so much while not saying anything at all. Which doing this.
Right. No, I mean, I love the travel aspect of it. I hate being away from my family. That part sucks. I mean, I remember the first match we traveled to was last year in Houston. God, what a game to start your broadcast career on. 4-0 at halftime. And that's an awful booth, too, by the way. You're low and you're on the 18.
Yeah. There's worse, but it's
no,
not great.
I mean, our dog Fred was really, really sick. And my wife's here tonight. I mean, she had to take care of Fred, and I'm in Houston, and I'm away from my family. And that can be really, really tough. And, it goes back to the time management aspect of what we do. You really have to prioritize the time when you are home to try to be a good husband, which is tough.
It's a
and
grind.
You have a kid. I can't even imagine.
Jason and I
having a kid.
talked about this. This is, again, me going off on a mad tangent here. We talked about social media the other day and how I recently I took Twitter and Instagram off my phone for a while because I was just like, what am I doing? Like, why am I looking at someone's I don't care about your Insta story. No offense to anyone and their Insta stories. I just found myself absolutely wasting time, and I've got a young baby and I've got a wife and we're at home and we're in a transitional apartment right now. I'm like, I just, that's something with the job that can consume you, and it's so important to always remain active, to be up to date on what's going on and potentially tweet about it. You don't have to, but to be active. And that's a part of the game and the game in the industry that we're in that I absolutely struggle with, because I did an event this year, for example. I won't say which one, because I met up with people that I really looked up to, and I couldn't wait to meet them. And then I met them. It was the most underwhelming thing ever, because all they did was this. And they didn't pick their head up at all, and yet they're brilliant fun on social media, and you meet them, and it's just not real life at all. And it's a struggle right now, and I think we're at the infancy of social media in general, and we really don't know how to deal with it. But a lot of people, they let it get to their heads, they let it get to their their psyche, and it can be dangerous.
Kevin, how do you like looking at your mentions after a loss?
Yeah, I mean, you're at fault.
It's unbelievable.
You're at fault.
Oh. Yeah,
you're an idiot. You're an absolute idiot.
Yeah.
Mike, you're an idiot. I'm an idiot.
Trust me.
There's nothing we can do.
I mean, there are probably people in this room that I blocked this year.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, if I did, come see me. We'll talk.
People can negotiate their way off the block list.
Well, is Trains here tonight? Trains is not here, is he? No. Okay, Trains is permanently blocked. But that is something that happens. Mm-hmm. When the team loses, I mean, I don't know about you, Kevin. I mean, I look at some of my mentions. It's really nasty stuff about, well, you didn't call the game well, or you talk too much, or you don't know anything about soccer. Seriously. Now, it comes with the territory.
Yeah, it does. It does.
It absolutely comes with the territory, and I value the interaction with our listeners. But that's been a challenge for me, is to not take that stuff personally.
Why is it a challenge? Here's why it's a challenge. Because they have access to your pocket.
Yes.
So you could be at home with your darling wife, who I've never met. Where are you, by the way?
Wave, Leanne. Yeah.
Leanne, how are you? And next thing, someone tweets you, and you take out Twitter while you're supposed to be watching a show, having a cuddle with your wife, and someone's angry at you. And that is not right. Nothing about that is right. That should not happen, how someone can just infiltrate your brain like that and decide. And it's okay for them to say those things, but this is where the use of social media, I don't know, for me at least anyway, and I'd like to try and have a few more kids, and I do not want to be that guy where... And the reason I took it off my phone was my 10-month-old son was climbing up my leg, and I'm on Twitter. And I went, no. This cannot happen.
And just to revisit, I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, because I actually really do value the interaction. And quite frankly, how blessed are we to be doing Atlanta United and not calling games for a team where fans don't care?
Well,
and that's the thing I do really appreciate, is that there is so much passion, even if it's negative. At least there is passion.
I'll say this. I think you'll probably get more negative because you're doing Atlanta United. One,
Maybe.
Because more people are listening to you. Yeah. And two, because when things go bad for the team, it's unexpected. Yeah. Frank de Boer said that the fans are spoiled. We all came down on it for that, but there was probably something to it in the sense that you expect the team to perform at all times. And when it doesn't happen, we throw our toys out of the pram a little bit as fans. And that can happen. I called the games for Chicago. I don't think I had any negative comments. Honestly, I did, I'm sure. But I'm sure I had a few in comparison to maybe if Atlanta United lose a game. Like, Atlanta go and concede 5 goals and a half at Chicago. You can do nothing right at that point. Like,
no.
I was laying out a lot that second half because there's not a whole lot you can do.
See, that's where it's a little different for us.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of difficult at times.
Yeah.
That was a hard one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but fortunately those have been few and far between.
Yeah.
But Kevin's right. I mean, and one thing that I've learned with Atlanta is anything you say has the risk of being heard by anyone, even if you call Bobby Warshaw an idiot on a post-game show. That
at midnight.
Literally at 1 a.m. on the East Coast. That can happen.
Yeah.
It did happen. Oh. So anyhow, but it's something that I value. And this is something we talked about at kickoff of the Toronto match, and I'm still really bummed out about the way it all ended, and it's taken me a while to really get over it. I truly love this team, and I love the opportunity to call games, and to not make the MLS Cup final was a missed opportunity to call another game. That makes me genuinely sad, but I said at kickoff, I don't know if you remember this, I said if you're listening to us either in Atlanta or maybe you're listening on Sirius XM and you're up in Canada and you're a supporter of one of these teams, take a moment just to reflect on how fortunate we are. You know, and we like making fun of Orlando, but, I mean, those poor guys have been in the league 5 years, haven't even sniffed the playoffs. There are legacy teams in this league that maybe make the playoffs once every 8 or 9 years.
Look at DC United now.
perfect example.
So many trophies,
Yeah.
and when was the last time they were a title contender?
How lucky are we? And how lucky are we that, okay, yeah, Darlington Nagbe traded to Columbus and Vasquez gets taken in the expansion draft today, but how lucky are we that we know, okay, Darren and Carlos, they've got it. And Arthur's going to provide the financial backing to do whatever it takes within the confines of the salary cap. These guys have it. You know, there are probably 18 clubs in this league minimum that don't have that luxury, that confidence in the people running the club that they're going to attempt to be competitive every year. We're incredibly fortunate, and I feel enormously blessed to be doing this. I mean, you look at the average attendance for this club, you look at the Forbes valuation of this club. You know, people ask me, do you ever want to do the NFL or the NBA one day? I feel like I've got that caliber of opportunity right now.
It's a top 20 club in the world. I mean, whatever metric you want to find, it's a top 20 club in the world.
It's a top major league sports team in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And the Jacksonville Jaguars would kill to have the following that Atlanta United would have. I'm not saying that in a demeaning way.
No.
You know? Well, I can't say that. We're recording. But, but no, seriously. Like, I don't know, the Sacramento Kings would kill to have what we have here with Atlanta United right now. Half the National Hockey League teams aren't even worth as much as Atlanta United right now. The Tampa Bay Rays play 81 home games a year and have less total attendance than Atlanta United, a soccer club in Atlanta. We're enormously fortunate. I'm sorry, what was the original question?
I have no idea.
I tend to ramble on radio a little too.
It's all good, Mike. It's all very true. And believe me, as someone who's new to the city, I'm well aware of that. And when I had the opportunity to call 5 games at the very start, Darren Eales and Carlos Bocanegra were guests on the show I used to host on beIN Sports called The Extra, and that's when we first got talking. And then I got a shout asking would I be interested in doing 5 games, because the then commentator Alan Green at the start for the first season couldn't do the first 5 games as he was doing Champions League. And I looked at the project and I'm like, it's not as if I was going to say no anyway. 5 games to jump back into Major League Soccer. I'd spent 3.5 seasons in MLS before moving to Miami to be with beIN. So it was a great chance to jump back in with the approval of my bosses in Miami. And they said yes. And then to see the reaction. Now, I did only get to call 1 game in Atlanta that year, but it just so happened to be the Miguel Almiron hat-trick, Andrew Carleton debut against Houston, which was a lot of fun. From that moment, I left after the 5 games, and I was devastated because I thought that was so much fun. The fan base, phenomenal. The city is class. Luckily, I came back at the end, and
I think we're all glad it worked out, aren't we?
Yes.
Very lucky.